Fitting a neck to a box. Let's talk about it. In a previous video, I showed you how I cut the opening on this punch box. The next step is to fit a neck to this box. And so I thought I'd show you how I would do that in this video. Talk about how I measure, how I do the layout, how I actually saw the neck to get it to fit this. And we'll just go through that process and hope it's of help to you. Again, this is a box I did recently. This is one of my necks that I like. It's one of our maple necks, rosewood fretboard, paddle headstock. I can make it any shape I want. I like these necks. They work well. They typically come pretty flat, pretty straight. I always suggest people you learn to look at a neck from the end, and you learn to eyeball it, look down there. Again, if you've got a big bow, either concave or convex, don't waste your time. It's not going to work. So this neck is really nice and flat and ready to go, and it's one that I've selected for this punch build. Now, as you know, when I cut that box, I cut it basically for 1.5 inch opening, which most of these necks are about 1.5 inch wide. If you take a look at this, what you can see is that the difference, or what I call the stagger, between the fretboard or the frets and this box is not very much. Really going to have a problem putting something underneath there, like a pickup. Now I can recess a pickup, but if I want to put any of our service mount pickups there, I'm going to have a problem. So what I usually need to do is I need to come in and I need to change this face. I need to remove some. I need to take some material off. And let's take a look, because I've kind of planned out what I want to do with this box. You know, we came up with these micro pups, and they've been incredibly successful, very well received, far beyond my expectations. A lot of guys have had some great success, including them. They're small, they're thin, they're low cost. We've got this nice line of covers that comes with them. So I think on this box, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put one of these pickups on the box. I'll be really happy with the sound that I get. So automatically I know that I've now got to compensate for the thickness of this cover. So I start off by putting this pickup, laying it on this neck, and get an idea of the relationship between the frets and the top of that pickup cover. Let me grab my straight edge. When I lay it on the frets and I look underneath there, I've got pretty good clearance underneath there. That's going to work well because the strings will be a little bit higher. It'll be just the right height, won't be too far away, won't be too close, so it's going to work really well. But the problem is when I put it in the box, now I've got the thickness of the cover. So what I need to do is I need to remove enough material to make up for this difference of this thickness. This is a pretty handy tool. I suggest everybody get one if you don't. They're relatively inexpensive, and you might be able to snag one at a flea market or a pawn shop and get a pretty good deal on it. If not, you can buy them at Home Depot, Lowe's. It's a caliper, a digital caliper. Basically, you turn it on, and by moving the jaws, you can measure a thickness of a part. Really handy in cigar box building. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm going to measure the thickness of this top. Zero, measuring the thickness, it's coming in about 200 thousandths, a little bit less than 1/4 inch, a little bit less than 1/4 inch. So I know it's about 2,000. So I know automatically to maintain that difference, I've got to remove about 200 thousandths. Now the neat thing about these calipers is they have a little set screw on them. You can tighten the set screw down, and now what you have is a really cool tool that you can use as a scribe. Because again, I want to cut 200 thousandths off of this face. I can take this caliper and I can just drag it right along the edge, and you can see how I'm scribing it. A light pass, then a heavy pass, and just get it a little bit deeper. Then once you have that scribed, what you can do is take your pencil and mark it. And if we cut to that line, remove that material, we now know that this box will fit and will be low enough so that the pickup cover will still be below the strings. Now at this point, there's one other little thing that we can think about. This is something you need to remember. Remember, 0.017. 0.017. Let me take you back to your trigonometry days. 0.17 is the sine of 1 degree. Now, why are we talking about degrees? Well, you'll hear about this if you haven't heard about it already. If you get involved with people building guitars, you'll see that there are some people who talk about a back angle on the neck. Some people like it, some people don't like it, some people require it, some people don't. But the idea is that you could take a neck relative to a box and you could tilt it down a little bit, and I've kind of exaggerated it. Does a lot of things. It's really popular and really important on those that are archtop boxes, archtop guitars. You've got to get up over the top because you still want to get up and reach the bridge. And you want to have a lot of pressure, as much pressure as you can get on the bridge, pushing it down, getting the vibration into the box. So the question is, should I put a back angle or not? I've done it both ways. And it really doesn't matter as long as you plan accordingly and you build accordingly. And what I'm going to do is I'll go ahead and show you on this one if I was going to put a back angle. And I typically have done a lot of guitars with 1 degree, 1.5 degree. I've never got up to 2 degree, but I've been to 1 degree. Now you have to keep in mind that you've got to make sure you understand the ramifications of putting that angle on there. Because the idea is, again, if we lower the angle, basically we want to make sure that the strings run parallel to the tops of the fret, and then we've got to get out here somewhere and we've got to get our bridge. And if the bridge is too high, we'll have way too much clearance and the action will be way too tall. If it's not high enough, we're going to have fret buzz. So we have to kind of compensate for that. But let's take a look at how we could do that. Again, using the tool, we scribed our line. We've got a line now to take out material to get rid of the thickness of the cover. Let's say we'll put in 1 degree. Well, what you need to do is take your trusty tape measure and measure the distance. This is roughly 10 inches. Now this 0.017 means that we're going to drop 0.017 inch per every inch we go. So we're over 10 inches. So we want to multiply this times 10, and all we have to do is move the decimal spot over 1. So if we're trying to get 1 degree down here, what we need is about 0.17. That's more than a quarter, or less than a quarter, more than an eighth, and it's just about 3/16. Again, this tool can come in handy. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, I know that I was at about 200 thousandths, 0.2. I'm going to add 1.7. I'm going to open this up to 370. So now I've got it opened up to 370, which is again the 200 I had here, plus the 170. And I'm going to come over and I'm going to mark the end of the neck, because that's the end where we're going to measure to, and we're going to work our way back to the front point. So what I do is then I can lay the straight edge here, again at the 370 point here, and back to the bottom of my 200 line here, and I begin to draw a line. Now if all goes well, again, we have the first line I put on, now we have the second line, which represents about a 1 degree angle. And if I follow that line closely, we should have a neck that has a back angle of about 1 degree. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go give it a cut, and then we'll see how it works out. Okay, you can see where I've cut that line. That's at 1 degree, tapering up here to the 200 thousandths, which is the thickness of the cover. And now I need to come in and cut this part out. I have my fine tooth saw here. Line it up at the bottom of the fretboard. And I want to put a little bit of an angle on it while I'm sawing. And I remove that piece. Now typically at this point I take my sander and I sand it nice and smooth and get it straight. But if I look at that, I actually did a fairly decent job of cutting that pretty straight. And again, it's going to be at 1 degree. It should be okay. One little trick I want to show you. Anytime I cut this angle, I take my Sharpie and I will come into this area and I will black it out, because occasionally that joint will show above the edge of the box, and it's just nice to have it kind of darkened out. I like it, makes them look a little bit better. So let's kind of get an idea of how this is going to fit. First time I've done this with this box. I can tell it needs a little bit of filing, but pretty close. Looks pretty good. I can tell right now I need to come in and take a little bit out of that, but it's okay for where we're at. So I want to talk a little bit more about, again, having put that angle on there, and what are some of the ramifications of having put that angle on there. This is a bridge, a typical hardtail bridge that I like to use, very popular. They work really well. There's a lot of adjustability in here. You can fix a lot of problems just in the adjustability of these bridges. As you know, you can move these saddles in, you can move them out. Really helpful and a good tool when you're working on the intonation. There's also another aspect is you can raise the saddles. They have these little set screws there and you can raise it up and down. And that's how you can adjust the action height. And that's really good. You can fine tune it and get it just perfect. So on this one, and again, what I'm doing is I have already marked the 25.5-inch scale length. I know where that's going to be, 25.5. So as I go ahead and do my assembly, I'll put the bridge in and make sure that the front of the saddles line up with my 25-inch mark. Now, what I can do is I can come in and I can kind of look and I can see right off the bat that I need this to be a little bit higher. And again, because we put an angle on it, as you can imagine, we're kind of tipping the neck down a little bit. That's bringing the strings up. There's easy ways to fix that. One, there's some adjustability with the saddles. We also sell spacers. And by simply putting this spacer underneath there, we are now able to raise it up. And with the strings, we're going to be just about perfect. Looks like it's going to work out well. And more importantly, again, with the cover we picked, with the pickup that we've chosen, we'll put that underneath there. We'll rest it on top of the saddle. We'll take a look, and we've got really, really good clearance. So this is one situation, one case where I did put an angle on it, and it worked out fine. I probably could have done it straight, and it would have worked out well too. But again, what I tell people, if you want to put a back angle on it, that's fine. If you want to keep it flat, that's fine. Just know which of the two you're doing. And this is something that'll really be helpful, is understanding this when you're working on different kinds of guitars. For example, on this license plate guitar, this license plate kit that we sell, the license plate itself is recessed into the lid or into the cover. And the way I always do these is I will affix the pickup, I affix a pickup to the back side of the plate, so there's no pickup on the front. So really, we don't need to have a lot of clearance or a lot of stagger between the fretboard and the height of the lid. I've got almost the full width of, or the full thickness of the fretboard, but that's not necessary. Now what's really nice on these, and again, this is something you learn over time, you learn through experience, and you learn through building these, is that you can work on trying to get everything to line up nice. Now you look at this license plate, it's kind of interesting. It's in Florida where I live. It has MGB, it was my initials, and again I bought this I think off of eBay, it was a vanity plate. And then really of importance is this year here, 1980, because that was the year my daughter was born. So this plate is really important to me and kind of important to my daughter. So this will be a fun build. But again, putting the neck in there, whenever you're working on a license plate guitar, it's really nice to be able to have the bridge line up in a free space. And on a lot of license plates, you'll see letters or numbers on this end and letters or numbers on that end, and there just happens to be a clear spot in the center. And on this one, it worked out just perfectly. Because if I take my scale, my tape measure, and I lay it down, knowing again, going to my 12th fret, it's 12 3/4, that means it's 25-inch scale length, and lo and behold, 25 and a half inches actually is right there in Tampa, Florida, where I'm at. So it's really cool. So I can put a bridge in here, and that's going to work out really well. Now, keep in mind, whenever you're building a cigar box guitar, you do not have any flexibility on the scale length. None. I mean, yeah, a little bit, a few thousandths, maybe a 32nd, it'll sound okay. But you can't go missing it by a ½ inch or a quarter of an inch. It's just not going to work. But you do have some flexibility in shortening the length of the fretboard. The fretboards that we make are made for 22 frets. And of course, you know, up here they're spaced pretty widely. This is where a lot of playing is going on. And when you see the really good guys, they start to get down to here and they start to play down in this area. It's not uncommon to see fretboards that maybe are only 18 or 19 frets. So you can actually shorten the fretboard up a little bit and have fewer frets. Now that's something you have to decide, something maybe you have to go over with the player to make sure he's happy with it. But you do have some flexibility in the length of the fretboard, and you can shorten it up. That's really handy sometimes because you need to move it around a little bit, maybe to get the bridge to line up perfectly. So again, keep that in mind. When you look at something like our new resonators, and you look at resonators, this is where a back angle would probably be pretty helpful. Because what you can see, we've got the resonator, we've got a cone, we've got a saddle up here. So it wouldn't hurt for that to tip up just a little bit to come up and ride over this. And again, we put the pickup here. So again, kind of look at what you're doing, kind of consider the options, think about it, plan accordingly, make adjustments. If you need to, make spacers, move the bridge up. You have to do a lot of things to get it right, but think about it. And the important thing is, you're never going to learn by just building one. This is where you need to get in building 2, 3, 4, or 5 of the same design, and you'll learn and you'll get to be a better builder. Well, I hope this is helpful. If you've got any questions, please let us know. Thank you.